My parents skipped my wedding because I got married before my perfect sister. Now their perfect family image is finally falling apart. My husband and I had been together for 4 years and I got married 8 months ago. Everyone attended the wedding except for my 30-year-old sister Molin and my parents. My parents' decision to skip the event was baffling, but my sister's absence didn't surprise me too much because we've never really gotten along. However, considering our past, I probably should have seen it coming. Let me give you some background on our family dynamics. I can't entirely blame my parents for constantly favoring my sister over me. Throughout her life, she's been exceptionally good at almost everything. She was the center of attention everywhere she went. As soon as she could walk, she was winning every spelling bee, science fair, and talent show in elementary school. Class president, valedictorian, and prom queen were all the same person in high school. Tall, slender, and quite attractive, she pursued modeling while in college before focusing on her business degree. She landed her first modeling job during her sophomore year, and I still remember it. To celebrate, my parents invited our entire extended family and her friends to a lavish party. Her first professional headshot was framed and hung in our living room, where it remains to this day right above the fireplace. That same year, I got my degree in computer science. They simply muttered, "Well done," and went right back to planning Molin's next photo shoot. She immediately climbed the corporate ladder after graduating and getting a job at a prominent company. By the age of 30, she already had a corner office and a company car, making her a senior executive. Meanwhile, I work for a reputable computer company as a mid-level software developer. While I'm happy with my job, and it's a decent profession, it's not the kind of employment parents brag about to the family. Plus, I'm bigger and shorter than my sister. My mother would make crude comments about my appearance, sign me up for exercise classes I didn't want to go to, and put me on diets all the time. When I was growing up, she'd say things like, "Molin never has trouble with her weight," or "You could look as good as your sister if you just tried a little harder." While I'd learned to tune out these comments by high school, they still had an impact. Over the years, I came to accept these distinctions. I finally came to terms with the fact that my parents never gushed about my accomplishments the way they did about Molin's. What was my option? I tried for years to get their approval by taking classes they recommended, joining clubs they encouraged, and even tried modeling for a short time, a failure my sister never lets me forget. But nothing was ever enough. I was just the second child, and they were completely infatuated with my sister's achievements. I stopped trying to impress them in my mid-20s. I focused on building my own life, growing professionally on my own terms, and forming bonds with people who respected me for who I was. To be honest, things got better after that. Knowing my parents were constantly preoccupied with keeping up appearances, I kept my interactions with them superficial to avoid conflict. During our mandatory holiday meals and scheduled family gatherings, I'd nod and smile as they raved about Molin's latest job, partner, or vacation spot. Since they had Molin to dote on, they didn't seem to notice my emotional distance. Then, at a computer science conference, I met my husband through a mutual friend. He noticed me, really saw me, unlike my family. He liked my dry sense of humor, my coding skills, and yes, even my body type. From the start, he never said I should change or made comparisons to other people. He proposed after 4 years of dating, when we were just home alone, enjoying takeout and our favorite television show in the background. It was perfect. Naturally, I told my parents I was engaged last year. Their reaction should have been my first clue. There were no congratulations, just silence. My mother then asked if I was sure I wanted to jump in head first, and suggested I might want to improve my fitness before the wedding. My father didn't say much at all. During the engagement party, my husband noticed their odd reaction, which I was too anxious at the time to fully take in. They were hunched over my mother's phone in a corner for most of the night. My husband later told me he'd overheard them on the phone with Molin, who was clearly crying. They were talking about how this wasn't the plan, and how they never expected Rebecca to get married first. Based on what he vaguely overheard, there were some minor hitches during the wedding planning process. Despite not even being engaged at the time, my mother had already created tons of wedding Pinterest boards for Molin and wasn't interested in helping me pick out a dress or venue. My mother just commented that it was practical and suited for my figure when I selected my dress, a simple yet exquisite A-line gown that made me feel beautiful. My future mother-in-law, who treated me like the daughter she never had, and I ended up working on most of the preparations together. I carefully went over and double-checked the guest list with my husband to make sure no one was forgotten before sending out both electronic and paper wedding invitations. I'm sure my parents received theirs because the electronic invitations included red receipts. I called, texted, and emailed them several times after realizing they hadn't responded. My messages were either ignored or met with evasive responses, saying they were very busy and needed to check their schedules. I couldn't spend too much energy worrying about it because I was too busy getting ready for the wedding. My in-laws were incredibly helpful, offering help with everything from the seating charts to the floral arrangements. Even at the beautiful bridal shower hosted by my husband's sister, the painfully obvious absence of my own family was never mentioned. Even though my parents weren't there, the wedding day was beautiful. We held a relaxed afternoon reception after the morning ceremony in a garden. Everyone was right when they said we looked very happy and in love. But there were moments when their absence felt like a physical ache, like seeing the empty front row seats or during the father-daughter dance I couldn't have. I sought answers after the honeymoon and the wedding. When I finally reached them by phone, they claimed they were deeply hurt because they'd never received a formal invitation. My mother launched into a long rant about how careless I was, how she'd always wanted to help plan her daughter's weddings, and how she couldn't understand why I'd leave them out of such an important occasion. This baffled me, as I was sure we had given them both types of invitations. During the call, I verified we had indeed sent them by checking our records. Delivery of the physical invitations was even confirmed. I didn't confront them about their attempts to manipulate me. I simply said I was sorry about the mistake and hung up. Later, my husband brought up several incidents that proved their real intentions, like the way they seemed shocked rather than delighted when we told them we were engaged, or the way they kept making excuses not to help with the wedding planning. Since he didn't want to add to my anxiety during the wedding planning process, he hadn't mentioned these observations before. But in hindsight, the pattern was clear. The idea that I, the less successful daughter, would get married before their beloved Molin was just too much for them. Their behavior simply served to validate what I had always suspected but had resisted, that I would never be able to compete with my sister in their eyes. The most depressing part was realizing that even my wedding day, which should have been a celebration of love and new beginnings, became just another front in their endless war to preserve their ideal family image, with Molin at the center. Molin recently got engaged to someone she's been dating for a year. According to family members I spoke with in group chats I'm not part of, my parents are openly expressing excitement about throwing an elaborate wedding for her. They're already bragging about securing luxury venues and high-end dresses, and my mother is taking Molin for private fittings at upscale boutiques, all that mother-daughter time I wasn't allowed. It's interesting that a large number of our family is suddenly refusing to go to Molin's engagement party and wedding. My parents' actions at my wedding apparently became a topic of family conversation. I simply tell relatives what I believe is true when they ask why my parents didn't attend my wedding. They couldn't handle me getting married before their golden child. I present the facts as I see them, without embellishment or attempts to gain sympathy. My parents contacted me a few days ago and accused me of intentionally trying to ruin Molin's wedding. According to their claims, relatives they've talked to are using excuses to avoid going to any of her wedding-related festivities. My cousin, who my sister vented to, informed her that people are reluctant to come because they've heard about how my parents treated me. My parents claim that because I'm envious of my sister's impending luxurious wedding, I'm spreading false stories. The problem is, I'm just telling people the truth about what happened. Maybe they should consider their behavior instead of blaming me for the results. If the truth makes them look bad, as things continue to unfold, I'm finding it harder and harder to maintain the pretense of a relationship with my parents. Their behavior during my wedding finally made it clear to me that I would never be enough for them, no matter what I did. Their absence from my wedding is no longer the hardest part. It's accepting the fact that I never had the kind and encouraging parents I always wished for. For now, I'm focusing on building a life with someone who truly appreciates me for who I am, but I'll keep you updated if anything major changes. First big update. 2 weeks after my last post, I took your advice and confronted my parents in person about their behavior at my wedding and their claims that I ruined my sister's big day. It was time to clear the air. When they started texting me about their tainted family name, my parents quickly began making accusations during our phone call, saying I was jealous of Molin and had planned the whole thing. I did something I'd never done before. I agreed with them, but not in the way they anticipated. Instead of defending myself, as I usually did, I told them, "You're right. I am jealous." Not of Molin's career, not her accomplishments, not her looks. I'm jealous of the unwavering love and support you've shown, something you didn't even try to show me. There was a pause on the line. My mother then started claiming I was overreacting and that they had always treated us equally. Something snapped inside me at that moment. Feelings that had been suppressed for years came pouring out. I told them about every birthday where Molin's latest success overshadowed my own accomplishments. When Molin had a modeling call, my mother canceled my high school graduation dinner. How her prom dress cost more than the total cost of my college textbooks for a year. I went on. Despite my father's attempts to interrupt me by accusing me of exaggerating, I talked about what it was like seeing them spend years planning my sister's imaginary wedding while showing no interest in mine. I told them how painful it was to see my parents' seats empty and how my mother-in-law had to help me with everything from wedding planning to buying my dress. Their reaction was telling. They flipped it back on me instead of accepting any of my points. "Why didn't you ever speak up if you felt that way?" my mother insisted. As if I hadn't tried to talk to them for years. My father went on to say that by discussing these feelings with our relatives, I was being unfair and spiteful. My mother then said something that finally made everything click. "We never imagined you'd go to such lengths as to try and ruin Molin's wedding out of spite," she said. "But we always knew you were insecure about her success. That's not how we raised you." I realized they couldn't even hear me. They believed their behavior, and my emotions had nothing to do with the whole situation. It was all about Molin's reaction. They were more concerned with her impending nuptials than the harm they'd caused me. Even during this discussion about their absence from my wedding, I didn't try to smooth things over. For the first time in my life, I didn't back down or apologize. Instead, I spoke my mind directly. "You're right on one point," I said. "I was raised by you. You instilled in me the belief that I would never measure up, that Molin's achievements would always be more significant than mine, that maintaining your ideal family image was more essential than my feelings. However, you also taught me that I deserve better than this, something you weren't willing to teach me." Before my father spoke, there was a long pause. He spoke in a cold, controlled tone. "Maybe it's time we stopped pretending to be bad parents. Since you've already decided that's what we are, and you obviously enjoy seeing us suffer," he said. "Since you're family, we assumed you'd help resolve this issue, but it's clear you've made your own choices." The final blow was delivered by my mother. "Maybe you just couldn't handle not being the center of attention," she said. "While we always tried to treat you both fairly, Rebecca, that's not our fault. You made the choice to play the victim." I refrained from arguing. What would it matter? Everything I had been saying had just been validated by them. They couldn't admit their part in anything, not even this latest argument. I simply hung up and said goodbye. I was surprised to feel relief after the call. There were tears, no doubt, but they weren't the hysterical, gut-wrenching kind I remembered from my earlier years. They were freeing tears. For the first time, I had expressed everything I needed to say without holding back or feeling guilty about how I felt. Later, my husband saw me watching the sunset from our back porch. He sat beside me and just held my hand without saying anything. "They're never going to change, are they?" I asked him after a while. "No," he said. "But you have changed." He squeezed my hand. "And that's what matters." He's right. I have changed. The girl frantically trying to earn her parents' approval is gone. The woman who emerged from that last conversation doesn't need their validation anymore. While recognizing that my parents will never be the people I need them to be is painful, it's not as painful as holding on to hope that they would change. For the first time, I genuinely don't care what happens with my sister's wedding or the family drama. I've said what I needed to say, and now they have to deal with whatever comes next. The most peculiar thing, I feel as though a weight I've carried my entire life has finally been lifted. While it's not the happy ending I'd hoped for with my parents, perhaps it was the one I needed. The ability to stop striving for love that should have come naturally. Second update. 3 days after confronting our parents, things took a surprising turn. Molin got involved in the drama, but her plan backfired badly. Yesterday, my sister sent me a text with her usual condescending tone. "What you said to our parents was totally inappropriate," it read. "They've helped us at every stage of our lives and given us everything. You can't just blame them for being bad parents because you're insecure about the choices you've made in life." The message continued with her typical mix of moral superiority and subtle jabs. I understand your wedding wasn't exactly what you'd envisioned, she went on, but that doesn't mean you should try to destroy mine. There's nothing wrong with wanting a celebration that honors those of us who have worked hard to meet certain standards, Rebecca. Not everything has to be a competition. I didn't bother to reply. I've found that engaging with her just gives her more ammunition. After years of putting up with her manipulative behavior, I simply blocked her number. Mullen has never been one to tolerate being ignored, so I figured that would be the end of it. My husband, who was laughing so hard he couldn't talk, called me at work a few hours later. Apparently, Mullen couldn't reach me directly, so she found his personal number, probably through a mutual acquaintance, and sent him a series of text messages detailing the precise reasons our relationship as sisters has never been good. She started her initial communication with him, professionally enough. As Rebecca's sister and someone who cares deeply about our family's well-being, I feel compelled to reach out to you. However, it soon devolved into her real motivations. She informed my husband that he had an obligation to help me behave in a more appropriate manner because he was the new man in Rebecca's life. The messages grew increasingly condescending. Family dynamics are complex, she told my husband, a professional software architect with an MBA. And someone with Rebecca's sensitivities might not grasp the bigger picture. She advised him to help me see reason before I irreparably damaged family relationships. However, the real kicker was her attempt to play on what she thought were his social climbing impulses. Indeed, she wrote, "Surely you understand that maintaining good relationships with successful family members like myself could be beneficial for your future. Rebecca's behavior is only hurting her own prospects and, by extension, yours." Having always been able to see through Mullen's facade, my husband found her attempt at manipulation hilarious. He particularly enjoyed her assumption that her business rank or the prospect of networking opportunities would impress him somehow. In his own words, "She really doesn't know me at all, does she?" We went over the messages together when I got home that night. I laughed with my husband instead of feeling offended or upset. Seeing Mullen's deceptive methods laid bare, particularly when directed at someone totally impervious to them, was liberating. I learned something significant about my sister as a result of this exchange. Despite all her accomplishments and successes, she's still that insecure teenager who needs to tear others down to feel superior. It's clear how little she knows about good relationships that she thought she could control me by manipulating my husband. When her direct approach failed, she quickly resorted to trying to use my husband against me, which was the most telling aspect. She used to do the exact same thing in high school. She'd try to turn my friends against me when she couldn't directly bully me. Different decade, same strategies. With this new perspective, I now understand how Mullen's actions went beyond simple sibling rivalry. Throughout our younger years, she made a concerted effort to maintain her status as the favorite daughter, always telling our parents and me how much better she was. She had to overshadow anything I accomplished. She had to point out my flaws to anyone I became friends with. My response to her games is different now. Her messages would have sent me into a spiral of self-doubt 10 years ago. I would have been annoyed and hurt 5 years ago. Today, I'm just, tired of the drama and find her blatant attempts at manipulation funny. My husband's response was perfect. Instead of getting pulled into her drama, he simply replied, "Thank you for your concern for Rebecca's well-being." As her husband, I'm focused on supporting her happiness, not managing her behavior. I believe it's best if you direct any future concerns directly to Rebecca. Have a good day. Mullen sent one last message after not getting the response she wanted. "I see," she wrote, "she's poisoned you against the family too. Don't say I didn't try to help when this all blows up in your faces." Ironically, Mullen's attempt to help has only further strengthened my resolve to stay away from my family's destructive dynamics. Nothing has changed, as her messages to my husband show. She's still the same scheming person who feels the need to dictate every narrative and who perceives any deviation from her ideal family script as a threat. Knowing her attempts at persuasion were so utterly unsuccessful is perhaps the most satisfying aspect of the entire incident. She managed to bring my husband and me closer instead of driving us apart. Completely unconcerned by her fears of social repercussions, we joked about her messages and planned a weekend getaway that night. I've come to understand that real family isn't about maintaining facades or dictating narratives. It's about sticking together, laughing together, and supporting each other when someone tries to manipulate you, even your own sister. I'm more certain than ever that I'll be better off keeping a safe distance from Molin's wedding drama. Instead of getting caught up in my family's endless power struggles, my husband and I have decided to focus on building our own happiness. They say success is the best revenge. But I'm starting to realize that real success isn't about impressing people, it's about accepting your choices and surrounding yourself with people who encourage, rather than hinder, your own growth. I feel more successful than ever by that metric. Third update. Following my sister's unsuccessful attempt to control my husband 2 weeks ago, things have taken some unexpected turns. The situation is actually getting worse, despite my parents' desperate attempts to repair their reputation. I found out through family connections that my parents have been on a crazy quest to correct the narrative. They've been calling every single relative individually and accusing me of spreading vile tales. Because I'm jealous of Molin's ideal wedding. They claim I'm simply resentful because her wedding will be so much more sophisticated and beautiful than mine. According to their latest version of events, I intentionally left them out of my wedding so I could play the victim. It's comical that they still live in the same house they've had for 30 years and have had the same email addresses since email was invented, but they're claiming I sent the invitation to an old email address and an old physical address. The good news is, their attempts at damage control are failing miserably. Our relatives aren't buying it. In fact, several family members have shared their own personal accounts of my parents' history of bias. According to one aunt, my mother had pulled similar stunts at family weddings before in an effort to make sure Molin was the belle of the ball. The way my extended family has reacted to my parents' manipulation is the most gratifying development. Significant family members, some of whom were expected to have major roles in the event, have pulled their support for Molin's wedding. They may no longer have access to the exclusive venue they were able to secure through family connections. Even a family friend's luxury dress business has unexpectedly encountered scheduling conflicts. At a family gathering last weekend, things really came to a head. Apparently, when someone innocently asked about my wedding photos, my mother became visibly upset. Out of jealousy, she launched into a defensive rant about how I had changed after getting married and was trying to destroy the family. Her outburst fell flat, surprising several relatives who were unaware of the circumstances and further damaging their carefully maintained reputation. It's especially ironic that my parents' frantic efforts to maintain their ideal family facade are exactly why it's crumbling. Every time they try to justify their absence at my wedding, they end up revealing more about who they truly are. People are seeing through their deception the more they try to paint me as the villain. Family members are now taking sides after previously remaining neutral. Recently, even my father's brother, who had always kept silent to maintain harmony, apologized for not speaking up sooner about how I was treated. He has decided not to go to any of Molin's wedding-related festivities with his family. I don't have to respond to any of this explicitly, so I haven't. The truth is, handling everything for me. Molin and my parents always end up revealing more of their destructive behavior when they try to twist the story. It turns out all those years of staying quiet and putting up with their treatment in an effort to keep the peace was actually a way of enabling their actions. My husband put it best. They built a facade of an ideal family for many years, but it was based on emotional manipulation and favoritism. Eventually, it was bound to crumble. Personally, I'm doing better than ever. I no longer have to worry about trying to earn my parents' approval. The stress of managing Molin's emotions has lifted. I'm not concerned with maintaining their ideal family image. For the first time in my life, sometimes, the best revenge is just letting the truth speak for itself, rather than taking action. Enjoyed that story? Check out a new one. Click the next video to dive in.